Hello and welcome to the first episode of the WFA podcast. I'm your host, Sam Langston, the Social Media and Digital Marketing Officer here at the County FA. And today we've got Chris Bright joining the show. Chris is a Wales international futsal player and the founder of the Diabetes Football Community, a support network which is designed to help diabetics share their experiences with others, ask questions, seek guidance and learn more about opportunities which can be created for people with diabetes to access football. In this episode, we talk about Chris's journey into futsal, the technical orientation of the game, advice to budding players and how futsal can be used as a tool to practice the fundamentals of football. We also discuss Chris's type 1 diabetes condition, how footballers help Chris cope with type 1 diabetes, as well as the diabetes football community, how it started and its current ongoings. Before we hit the interview with Chris, please make sure you're following us on Facebook, Instagram and Twitter at Worcestershire FA. And please feel free to fire in any questions, feedback or suggestions for future guests and topics you'd like to be here discussed. Thanks for listening and I hope you enjoy my chat with Chris Bright. I'm delighted to be joined by Chris Bright. Chris, thanks for coming on the podcast.
No problem. Thanks for having me.
It's good to have you on and finally get the podcast up and running because it's been quite a long and laborious process for me, to be honest. It's also nice to have a fellow Villa fan as well. There was no bias in choosing who was the first one coming up based on that. Right, so Chris, futsal. Let's talk about that first. Just give the listeners like a bit of a background on yourself, maybe. Could you explain a little bit about your futsal career? And maybe how and why you got into it, when you started playing, who you currently play for or played for in the past.
Yeah. So in terms of getting involved in futsal, it was around the year, I suppose, 2013. I was playing for Pershore Town, obviously one of the semi-professional clubs in Worcestershire. And one of the lads that I played with there, he played futsal before at university. And suggested that the way I played football would be a good match maybe to futsal. I'd never tried it before, and when I was at university, sort of the first time round as an undergraduate, I'd wanted to, but I never had the opportunity to do that. So when this came up, I thought, you know what, I do want to give this a go. I want to give this a try. So I joined him on going to one of the sessions at Birmingham Tigers at the time. Before that, I tried out at Hereford at the Point 4, and that unfortunately that club at the time went sort of bust or ceased to exist at that moment. And then I went over to train at Birmingham Tigers and the indoor futsal arena at the time in Aston. One of the few areas, one of the few places you can play futsal in the area actually. So it was just give it a go at the time, and fortunately for me it went pretty well, and I enjoyed that first season. We were playing, it was kind of thrown in at the deep end. Obviously I'd been sort of semi-professional footballer, played for sort of Bromsgrove Sporting and Pershore and stuff in the area, but then getting thrown into playing futsal at what was the top league in the country at the time was a challenge, but sort of took to it pretty well. I really enjoyed it, and that season I was player of the season at the club, Birmingham Tigers, and then at the end of that season I was given an opportunity to go and train with the Wales national team, and that would have been 2014 into 2015. So we're talking about from the moment I started playing in 2013, maybe a year, 18 months later. Sort of transition to an opportunity then to go and have a chance to train with the Welsh national team, and it was something that I wanted to do at 25, 26, to be given that that opportunity to go and push yourself at that level was something that you think, do you know what, in my career as playing sort of part-time semi-professional sport, probably isn't going to get a lot better than that to be able to have that opportunity. So I gave that a go. Unfortunately, I suffered with a couple of injuries, but I made my first senior appearance for Wales in 2016. following some injuries and some problems. And yeah, I unfortunately got injured again, but I've kind of got to the bottom of why I struggled with injuries for 2 or 3 years quite badly. And on the back of that, again in December of last year, 2018, sort of on the comeback from those injuries and making progress, I was in the home nations squad for Wales and played at the home nations in Ireland. So it was, it was an amazing opportunity again. And feel very lucky that sort of in 3 or 4 years I've gone from not really playing the sport to playing for the national team. But I think that's what futsal as a vehicle and as an opportunity for other players gives you. You might be more suited to it. You might have your eyes on wanting to do something really cool in your career that maybe football you'll never reach. You'll never be able to play professional football, but in futsal at the minute, you might be good enough to go and play for your country one day. And that's how I viewed it. You know, I viewed it as I was a semi-professional footballer. I was earning a bit of money to play, but you know what was it going to achieve, I suppose. And you know, I'd played quite a few years at that, and I thought, you know what, futsal's something different. And you know, look back on this and go, was it the right direction in my part-time career, I suppose.
Absolutely, and you've just touched on it there when you were talking about like the style of play. It's got quite a distinctive style, hasn't it, futsal? You know, it's quite technically orientated, I suppose. Just for some listeners who may not know too much about futsal as a game, could you give them a brief overview of what it kind of involves?
Yeah, so it's obviously it's a five-a-side game, roll-on, roll-off substitutions. It's played into hockey goals. Kind of dimensions, it's played on a court normally, so it's 40 meters in length, normally about 20 meters wide as a sort of a generic basis. The ball's slightly weighted differently, so there's a reduced bounce in it, and then that encourages it to stay on the floor more. So essentially the game becomes a very quick, fast-paced, tactical, almost like game of chess, of how you can move 4 players in different directions to try and get yourself down the court and try and score goals. So it's a very tactical game, technical game, a lot of pace, a lot of speed, agility, and then skill on the ball. Essentially 1v1s and being able to deal with pressure on the ball is absolutely vital in futsal, because there is no room. So you receive the ball and somebody stood on top of you. So there's a big argument around the sport being a really good development tool for football because of that opportunity to be pressed by players. But also it's an amazing game in its own right to go and watch because of the speed, the counter-attacking, some of the skill on show. And then obviously the goals. I mean, games normally, you know, finish up, I don't know, I've played in games where it's been 13-12. So you know, you're getting probably a lot more goals and a lot more action than you would get in a normal football game. So, I mean, the excitement's there, and the game is growing really quickly now in this country.
Yeah, in summary, I suppose, like you just said, it's quite a creative, technical, and speedy game, isn't it? Really, requires quite a lot of intricate movements as well. I actually saw a stat earlier, and it said compared to an 11-a-side football game, a futsal player touches the ball on average 600% more times in an average match, which is quite incredible, really, when you contextualise it, isn't it?
Yeah.
It sort of encapsulates how like technical the game is, how little space you've got, and how it really suits like a high tempo, like passing play and players who have got really good technical ability. I'm glad you've actually pointed out that it's like a great tool to practice the fundamentals of football, because that was actually going to be one of my questions to you. What you actually thought about that, so I can tick that off on my list.
I was just going to say, it's just it's a great opportunity to test yourself technically and tactically. It lends itself very much to, like, it's a blend of a few sports. They say it's like a blend of basketball, a blend of football, and like a blend of, I believe it was handball, where the rules all come from slightly differently. So if you go to a basketball game, for example, you know, 5 fouls, I think, and then the 6th one, you end up having a free throw. It's the same in futsal. You give away 5 fouls, you give away the 6th one, you end up with a 10-meter penalty. So there's this blend that's happened with the rules, and it's made it a fast, intense, very tactical way of, and there's blocks involved, like there is in basketball, and they talk about pick and roll and blocking players and things like that. And it's just, it tests yourself in a different way. And then when you get onto a football pitch, as I've done since playing futsal and go back to that, you just feel like it's just too much space. Like there's too much time and there's too much space because you've dealt with opposition players literally always on top of you, that when you get onto a football pitch, you just feel that there's just so much room and so much time on the ball. From that perspective, just changing perception and the speed that you do things and the time that you use to make decisions, everything has to quicken up in futsal. So then when you go to football, you can see things maybe a little bit quicker than some of the opposition is. It's as much as I love the sport in its own right, it has so much merit as well as being used as something for development in football.
Yeah, it's a very unique game, certainly, isn't it, futsal? And like we've alluded to, it requires a lot of technical ability. I suppose it requires a lot of cognitive ability as well. With not having much time on the ball, you've got to react very quickly, things like that. That sort of leads me on to our next question, really. If there was one player, past or present, footballer, that you would want to have in your futsal team, who would it be?
Oh, that's an interesting one. Well, I'll give you a reason. Lead up to it first. I've got to go an idea of who I'd go for. Okay. The reason is because I believe futsal is such an all-rounded game. So you need to be smart, intelligent. You need to be quick on the ball. You need great technical ability. You need 2 feet. And you need to be able to defend and attack. So the person I'd probably choose as a result of that is James Milner.
For a second, I thought you were going to say Jack Grealish then.
No.
That'll certainly be my pick.
As somebody British and somebody that I grew up watching, he played for Aston Villa, obviously, and somebody that just sprung to mind as being able to do a bit of everything that is important in a game like futsal. James Milner's a good one. I mean, you could argue, again, if you went the other way, you could have somebody ridiculously talented on the ball, somebody like Eden Hazard, who's played futsal before. He's the other one that sticks in my head as somebody I would go, do you know what, I'll have him on court, because he can just deal with pressure in any situation. So you either go with somebody who's very all-rounded and can do everything and is strong at attacking, defending, dribbling, right and left foot, or you go for somebody who's unbelievable on the ball at beating people, somebody like Eden Hazard.
Okay. No, that's good. We've got a nice mixture there, both James Milner, Eden Hazard as well. So just to finish on with regards to futsal, for you, what do you think the best thing about the game is? And what would you say to any youngster out there who's potentially looking to get involved in the game?
Oh, best thing about the game is touches on the ball. I mean, as simple as that. If you're a kid out there and you just want to play and you're a ball player and you don't want to, and you want to get better at dealing with pressure, get better at dribbling, tactical decision making at speed, it is the game to get involved in. And as it's growing now in its own right, I think it produces its own pathway to then go on and, maybe play for England, or if it's Wales or if it's Scotland, there's opportunities where the pathway is a little bit shorter to get into play at the top level in this country and pulling on your national team shirt at this moment in time. And who wouldn't want to do that? If you've got an opportunity in your career to do that in any sport, it's a magic moment. So the pathway is shorter. The game's really exciting to be a part of. There's loads of goals, and as a young player, I think it should give you an opportunity to use it as a platform to develop in football, if football is the thing that you end up going on to play. But also it gives you this other avenue of futsal where, as this game continues to grow and grow, who knows how big it will become in this country. You then have an opportunity at the end of it to say, do you know what, I'm going to be a futsal player. I'm going to play it. I want to play at the top level in this country, and I want to try and represent England. And the way that the England national setup is here, and the way that the Welsh setup, they're just pushing the sport forward. They're trying to make it bigger and better. And there's obviously with the strategy being launched very recently from the English FA, you can see that there's a real backing now behind futsal certainly in England. And I know from my experience with the national team in Wales, it's exactly the same thing. The sport's not going anywhere, it's growing. And I think kids will will really benefit from it. And I think you just need to get involved and see where the avenue is to be there and to be playing.
Of course, there's certainly the scope for it to grow, definitely, like you've alluded to, and there's certainly a lot of opportunities in Worcestershire for anyone who wants to play futsal as well. So if there's anyone out there who would potentially like to get involved, I'd recommend heading onto the website, WorcesterShireFA.com. You can also give us a call, and we'll be happy to deal with any queries that way and try and get you involved in futsal, involved in one of the clubs. We're actually running an FA level 1 in coaching futsal course in the forthcoming months. And just an FYI, that's now sold out. So thanks for everyone who's booked onto that. And as a side note, we've actually had a lot of calls and emails recently about booking onto courses. So to save you a bit of hassle, I'd recommend visiting the website again. It's worcestershire.com/coaches/development and courses. And that'll provide you a breakdown of all the courses we're offering and which are still available to book. So if you want to book onto any courses or futsal courses, anything like that, I'd recommend heading to that specific URL and getting yourself booked on there. Right. So leaving futsal behind then, Chris, I'm going to talk a little bit about diabetes. One of my mates is actually type 1 diabetic, so I do know a little bit about it already. But for those who maybe don't know as much about it, could you give us a brief overview again, like you did with the futsal, what it is and like how it maybe affects you?
Yeah, so there's most people will think diabetes and probably think about type 2 diabetes in their minds. In being a lifestyle condition, diet's affected it, and if maybe if you were overweight, you may be suffering with diabetes. But there is actually 2 types to it. It's not just what you read in the media. It's there's more to it. I live with the other type, which about 5 to 10% of people that live with diabetes have type 1 diabetes. There's about 90% live with type 2. With type 1 diabetes that I live with, it's an autoimmune condition which is triggered by they're not sure what. It can happen to pretty much anyone. There seems to be some kind of a family link in some people and then not in other people. So the reasons as to why it comes about, we're not sure of. But basically, it means that a hormone called insulin is no longer produced by the pancreas. So my pancreas doesn't produce it, and the hormone is used to basically get sugar, glucose into the muscles to be used in energy. So without it, essentially, we can't properly synthesize and create energy in our body. So I have to then input this hormone into my body for the rest of my life to ensure that I can use glucose in the right way and use food in the right way, and basically manage that. So I have injections every time I eat, pretty much, to control the condition, and then I monitor blood glucose levels really closely as well. So I have a device which I wear, which is able to tell me at any given moment what glucose level I am, and it trends it on a chart and stuff like that. So it's just a 24/7 monitoring condition that you never really get a break from, and you have to kind of manage by inputting insulin to help sort of. It's almost just trying to keep like homeostasis, like you're trying to just constantly achieve this level and this line that makes you feel fine. Because if not, if you fall out of kilter on either end, you go too high or you go too low, then the ramifications can be pretty catastrophic, to be honest. There's some horrible stories that you can read about it all over the news of people collapsing, people dying. It's an underestimated condition, which I think is a lot of the reason why I try and do the things that I do now, because people don't fully understand it, and it's got a kind of a bit of a stigma attached to it that's unfair, which I certainly try my best to try and change.
Yeah, so like you alluded to, it's pretty complex and underestimated condition. My next question to you is, you're obviously a big football fan as it is, but how do you say football has actually impacted your life with regards to your diabetes, or futsal in your case?
Yeah, so I think it's been obviously a massive positive influence on my life. I used football for a very long time as a vehicle to escape living with a condition like this. I mean, you, as type 1 diabetes is classed as a hidden disability. So you are, if the government is aware enough to make it a disability, but then for me, I always had to take part in mainstream football or mainstream futsal. There's clear that then there's some kind of difficulties though. So I loved football and I could never, and I always enjoyed playing, but there was always challenges within it that it threw up because I was just a bit different, and you can't really get away from that with type 1 diabetes. I need to do injections and I need to monitor my blood glucose levels, but it was a hugely important vehicle in my life to escape having this 24/7 thing. I talk about having 90 minutes on the pitch where I pretty much could forget about it. As long as my levels were good, I would only look at them at the start of the game. I'd only look at them at half time at the end. But the 45 minutes in the first half and the second half, you just focus on the game, which is really nice because then as soon as the rest of the time, it's it consumes a lot of thought having to manage something that if you get wrong can be life-threatening. So you have to I just use football as a way to escape, and I have done for a very long time, and I focused a lot of energy on trying to be as good as I could be because I want, it was something that I picked up well as a kid and I'd done well with, and I wanted to use it as to try and sort of show that diabetes wouldn't stop me, and I enjoyed the sport, and then I wanted to show the condition that it couldn't impact on my life really, and show to everyone else that I wasn't going to be held back by living with a hidden disability.
Yeah, that was actually a really poignant point for me in your book's Inclusion Week article you wrote the other week, and it said you get 90 or 40 minutes where you can focus on the game rather than what your blood glucose levels are doing. It's been a release for such a long time, and obviously you were just speaking now about it being an escape mechanism effectively. I think that quote really encapsulates when people say football's just a game. It's a lot more than a game. It impacts and changes people's lives in so many different ways. It's a sport for everyone, and obviously here at the FA, one of the key messages we're trying to spread is that football for all message. Yeah. So it's great to see a lot of people like yourself enjoying the game, even having diabetes and using that as a release, which is fantastic. So moving on to your work with the diabetes football community. For those again who maybe don't know much about it, could you give a brief overview of what it is all about, your involvement, and maybe how the community came to fruition?
Yeah, so where it started, I think, is it comes off the back of my own sort of feelings and how I'd felt across sort of 17, 18 years of the condition. I felt there was maybe some support that I would have loved to have seen in football. There's not like I had to deal with heavy discrimination or real huge challenges. It was just maybe sometimes you didn't feel really comfortable because you were the only one that had to deal with injecting or having blood glucose checks. So for me, it was off the back of that feeling, and then through my own kind of moment of, I suppose, some individual achievement in playing for Wales and the futsal stuff, and having enjoyed some success, I felt it was an opportunity to try and give something back. I felt I'd learned a lot in 20 years of how to deal with the condition, how to manage it, to try and to get out there and play. There's a lot of management stuff that goes into it, and I hoped that I could bring that across, let people know about the things that I did to try and manage it, but also encourage other people to get involved and share their thoughts, because as much as I know stuff, I don't know it all, and I hoped that there would be lots of other people out there that would kind of be able to share in that and share their experiences and share their tips. So I started on social media with a Twitter account, just posting, trying to get involved in the conversation through Twitter about diabetes, and then linking in football and starting to try and talk about it in that way. So I started with Twitter, then created a Facebook account, created the website, and then sort of started to venture onto Instagram. And really the premise behind it is connecting people that have got this love and this interest in football first, and then allowing them to connect with the condition as well, because I think for people with diabetes, if you're just trying to connect them on the fact that they've got diabetes, sometimes that's not enough in common to have a really good conversation, to really want to share. But the fact is, a lot of the people that have been involved, it's their love of football first, and then the fact that they've got this condition, this unwanted tag, that they then come and get involved in the diabetes football community, where we just try and do, as a team, really, we encourage people to share advice, tips, guidance. We try and inspire people, and we just try and make football and make people's lives that little bit better whilst dealing with something that's not so great. So, and we've just, and as a community, we've grown so quickly and so widely that I really didn't expect it. But I think it shows the premise that there is an issue in terms of people's support and how they feel supported with it. I don't think it's just down to football, but I think we've proved a bit of a gap, really, that there is for people with chronic medical conditions like type 1 diabetes within sport. I think we've, because of that, mainstream sport is the only place we can go, and we live with a hidden disability. I just think it proves that there's a gap there in support for people living with chronic medical conditions, which the diabetes football community here has just gone and kind of sat in.
Absolutely, and social media nowadays is such a powerful mechanism to get everything out, isn't it?
Yeah.
For anyone who doesn't already, you can actually follow the Diabetes Football Community at TDFC Football on Twitter. I'd also recommend checking out their website at the diabetesfootballcommunity.com. There's some really good content and information on there that relate to what Chris has talked about. Just as a last thing, Chris, to round everything off, we were talking off air about few upcoming events that were coming your way with regards to the diabetes football community. Do you want to just express a little bit of what they're about and maybe how people can get in touch with you if there's any chance for people to get involved?
Yeah, so obviously we run an all diabetes futsal team. So anybody with the condition that wants to get involved in playing futsal, we have a team that represents the United Kingdom. We also have now a team representing the condition within a mainstream league in London. Obviously, that's a bit of a way out of Worcestershire, but it shows you the kind of ambition we have. So there's team stuff going on. We've got training sessions at the University of Worcester, where I'm based a lot of the time. That was to get involved there with playing, coaching, just wanting to get involved in the team. There's all sorts of stuff going there. So we'll be working towards the European Championships in the summer, Dia Euro, which is an amazing opportunity to showcase what people can do with the condition. We've also got a conference coming at the end of the year, again at the University of Worcester, where we'll be bringing together people that have showcased how to manage type 1 diabetes in a sports environment. So we've got an ex-professional footballer with type 1 diabetes coming. We've got a sprinter with type 1 diabetes, somebody involved in the GB rowing program with type 1 diabetes, all coming to the University of Worcester to showcase how they manage their condition to get involved in sport. So it'll be a really exciting opportunity to show that to people with the condition, so, and hopefully that they can get some education from. Hopefully there'll be educators in the room as well that are just interested in how they can learn more about type 1 diabetes. And you never know, we might get some coaches and referees from the local area to come in and have a look. But I think from a 2019 perspective, we'd love to do that. We're also hoping that we'll be working with Worcestershire FA later in the year on some regular diabetes participation, probably maybe for young and old alike, when the move to the new headquarters comes about. So there's plenty of exciting stuff that we're up to this year.
Excellent. And just touching on that University of Worcester event, what's the date for that, Chris?
Yeah, so the conference is November the 17th. So we've positioned it right next to World Diabetes Day, which is November the 14th. And that is Diabetes Awareness Month. So very poignant, and hopefully people will respond to that as well.